The past two episodes of the B-Sides covered two licensed IPs based on anime. In this episode, I open with a question asked to Suda during an interview with Gamasutra back in 2006. Grasshopper seems to be making more original properties again, after a bunch of licensed properties or games from other companies. What do you want to communicate with this original IP? Naturally, at Grasshopper, we like to make original games, but you've gotta make licensed titles sometimes. Preach, Papa, preach. Now, my spirits were lower about the B-Sides project right after playing Samurai Champloo Sidetracked. I needed a good B-side that encapsulated all the aspects that makes Grasshopper's games so unique. It's safe to expect that a Grasshopper title might include some over-the-top violence with explicit language peppered over an abstract narrative with a deluge of style all up in the mix. With those expectations in mind, Contact feels like the odd man out in the catalog of a publisher that brands itself as a punk rock video game band. It's too clean and pure. It's like a game that a parent could give to a child as a gift, and they wouldn't require therapy afterwards. Something's just not right here. Coming from Gochi Suda, I thought it would be totally crazy. This seems really normal. I mean, it's not really my game. It's mostly Ueda's. I think if I'd made it, it would have been called Killer Contract or something. And anyway, it's the normal people like me who make the crazy games. People who make normal games like Contact are the real crazies. So Akira Ueda is totally nuts. Contact is somewhat of a cult classic, but I wouldn't even call it that. The people who've played it generally love it, but I would say on the whole, nobody knows what it is. Why did this game fail to reach DS owners? Because it's not terrible at all. It's actually quite unique. Well, from my perspective, the failure of Contact is a case of a great game released at the wrong time, and it couldn't have picked a worse release window. Let's address the fuzzy pickle in the room here. Many parallels have been drawn between Contact and Earthbound, also known as the Mother series, due to its 16-bit art style, comedic nature, and quirky characters. Most notably, Contact's mascot, the Professor, being identical to and Donuts from Earthbound. To the dismay of Grasshopper, Contact was released within a month of Mother 3, and that was a game that had been highly anticipated for over a decade by many Japanese gamers. And American gamers, but that's another story, Nintendo. Now, people have speculated that the close release date to Mother 3 was why Contact only ended up selling around 8,000 units in its first week, and a grand total of 25,000 units by the end of the year. Upon researching Contact, I found that weirdly enough, it is the least prominent game featured in the Art of Grasshopper Manufacture. As a matter of fact, there is no artwork of Contact included in the art book, with the exception of the box cover. The game was relegated to one sparse paragraph of history in which nothing substantial is revealed. Suda just offhandedly mentions that Akira Ueda was the creator whom he used to work with, and Suda's only involvement was as a producer. So who is the creator of Contact, Akira Ueda? Well, he was a prominent background designer for many 16-bit classics such as Secret of Mana and Super Mario RPG, and his experience with these 16-bit titles carry over into Contact in big ways. Not only did he create this game, he worked as the designer of the levels on top of being the scenario writer. What can I say, Akira is nothing short of a Renaissance man, but there was very little information about the creation of Contact out there. I had to resort to finding a cached image of the now defunct Contact website, but I did manage to find a summary of what Contact meant to its creator. My name is Ueda, the director of Contact. I was in charge of planning this game's scenario, worldview, and things like maps, design, and backgrounds. I have no idea how well the Japanese-specific jokes and wordplay will be translated, but I'm sure that the localization staff will do a great job of communicating the unique world of Contact. We have a lot of respect for the history and culture of video games. I grew up with it all around me, so I put all my effort into making games of my own. The essential qualities of a video game are excitement, laughter, emotion, action and maintaining the player's interest. Though Contact is the first original game I have directed, it reflects the respect I have for the old wonderful video games I used to play. I would be happy if this came across to the players in America. Atlas was tasked with localizing the game in North America. Believe it or not, Tom Hewlett, yes, Silent Hill Downpour Tom Hewlett, was the director of localization. Despite any preconceptions you might have about the guy, at least he's responsible for getting the West Contact, which is more than I can say about Nintendo and Mother 3. Anyways, you meet the mascot of this game, the Professor, and his little dog who wants to become a cat creature named Mochi. He's named Yan Yan in Japan. The professor asks you a series of questions about you, the player. Much like the intro to Earthbound, he asks you your favorite and least favorite food, hobby, where you live, whatever. He seems pretty trustworthy. I gave him everything, all the information. Insufficient data. Please see side B. Nice. After a very bizarre dream sequence, we meet our seemingly homeless hero Terry sleeping on a park bench when suddenly in the night sky something goes wrong with the professor's ship and one of the jade power cells falls down next to Terry. Here you're going to notice a large clash in art styles. I believe these contrasting art styles were just another way to alienate the professor from Terry, as they both come from vastly different worlds. This is where our two constant companions meet for the first time, but before they have a chance to introduce themselves, the professor demands Terry board the ship. One thing you'll know about Terry is that he has absolutely no free will, well, at least in the beginning. And you, the player, are a character in the story that interacts with the professor and controls Terry. The fourth wall is almost absent entirely from the plot, and that adds a different layer of engagement in the story. Terry boards the ship, and soon after, it's shot down by some unknown enemy. Terry falls off of the ship and washes up on a beach, and the professor reaches out to the player and asks the player to look after Terry and explains that his ship crashed into an abandoned pirate ship and then somehow merged, and he wired it up, and now it's like a half spaceship pirate ship, and he needs more power cells to fix it up for travel and to get Terry home, but that's kind of like a secondary objective. The professor will be checking in with Terry remotely, so you get to watch him and Mochi grunt about on the bottom screen, and they kind of muse on the situation at hand. It's so cute. Terry is given the quest to find these power cells, and it's not as simple as it seems. Contact is not your standard action RPG. It's nothing like Secret of Mana. Every little action you take, from running, fighting, cooking, fishing, anything you do, it has an experience bar and level of its own. For instance, fighting with knives. The more you do it, the more knife experience you gain, and you can level it up and unlock particular abilities for that weapon class. The stats level up instantaneously, meaning you don't have to wait until after a battle, which keeps things interesting. Speaking of the battle system, it resembles an MMO style, wherein you can have Terry target an enemy on the field, and he will slowly charge up his attacks and release them on his own. You don't really have control over Terry's combat with the exception of special abilities you can use and his position on the field. Thanks Xenoblade Chronicles battle style. Most times you'll just be grinding Terry up against an enemy and hoping he attacks before he gets stun locked by the enemy. You want to be very mindful about getting into fights, as there aren't many healing items dropped by enemies or in the chests, so you either craft your own healing items or find a bathtub in the middle of a dungeon, or just run for your life to avoid conflict entirely, but the enemies may chase you down across different screens. I'm not even kidding. I gotta say, I was really hesitant about this style of RPG because it's not full-on action RPG and it's not fully turn-based. It strikes a balance somewhere in the middle, and it was very innovative for its time. It's unique, and it will take some time to get used to if you've never played this style of game. You'll quickly understand that there's just too many stats to keep track of, so you'll likely just stick to the weapons and attributes that you like to use. It's weird. The more Terry gets his ass kicked by enemies, the stronger his defense grows. So you don't even need to win battles to level up Terry's stats. You can make it through the entirety of this game without too much leveling, so long as you have enough potions on hand to survive all the boss battles. Not only can you level every facet of Terry, but our guy can change into different job classes, which are known as costumes. He can only change them in the ship or when he finds one on the spot. You start off as plain old Terry, Terry, and you quickly get a fireman's outfit, which allows him to hose down the enemy. Shortly thereafter, you're gonna get one of the most useful outfits, the chef. The chef allows Terry to use kitchenware like a chef's knife, which will quickly carve up enemies into cooking ingredients. Terry can then take these ingredients and cook them up in a pan on the ship to make healing items, which is the most useful skill for him to have. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention that Terry also has a digestion meter, represented by this stomach here, wherein when he eats a meal, it takes up a certain capacity in his stomach, which will allow him to heal a set amount of HP, provided he has room in his stomach. I don't really care for the stomach system, as most of the highest restoring meals Terry can eat occupy a larger capacity in the stomach. This can get kind of annoying if Terry is battling a boss on a full stomach and his HP starts to get low. Since there's no option to vomit or clear out room in your stomach, you have to wait for Terry to fully digest the food before you're allowed to heal. You can bypass this mechanic altogether by just drinking potions because they don't take up too much room in the stomach and they heal 80 HP per bottle. Now, another great way to heal up Terry is just by trekking back to the ship and taking a hot bath and a nap. Anytime Terry sleeps, a minigame slash gigapet segment plays out with Mochi, where you interact with the Pooch Pussy hybrid in order to strengthen your bond with him. You can feed him, let him hack that PC, scratch a post, or you can rub a circle around him to pet his belly. By the way, Suda51 was lying in the art book because I found an old interview where he confirmed he did have a hand in the development of Contact. In Contact, there is a character called Yan Yan, a kind of cat dog. It was my idea to put this character in the game. My main focus was about Yan Yan. That's pretty much everything I did in Contact. Oh, I guess that explains this. So you get bonding points that pay into summoning Mochi to attack enemies during a battle. To summon Mochi, you have to use the Mochi decal, which requires you to place a sticker on the field, and the touchscreen mechanics here for the stickers are a tad finicky. Until late in the game, you likely won't have enough bonding points to raise your relationship with Mochi, so when you summon him, he'll just prance his way out into the field and lick his crotch and then leave. Oh. Okay. Speaking of decals, occasionally you'll find some question mark stickers in treasure boxes or dropped by enemies. These decals fall into passive or active categories. Much like Let It Die, you can load up Terry with decals that improve specific traits, or you can just place spell decals out on the field which have a variety of uses on their own. There's sort of a karma system at play wherein Terry can choose to help out the NPCs of the world he encounters or just murder them indiscriminately. He can actually lose karma points for hurting the innocent people or non-aggressive animals like the sheep or cows. I heard the karma system doesn't alter the ending or anything major in the game, so I didn't explore the system too deeply. Just know that it will make the citizens of the world fear you if you're going around killing everyone. Personally, I think outside of the professor bearing a resemblance to an Earthbound character, I feel the mother comparisons fall apart. Contact's just too original for its own good. And I think this hodgepodge clash of simple and complex styles with overtures of nature and square waves was a bold move in 2006. The story of Contact is mostly understated and absent throughout most of the game, up until the end where it throws a big mindfuck or two at you. Primarily, you just move from one island to the next, collecting power cells and fighting large-scaled, graphically detailed boss fights. Occasionally, Terry runs into a member of the Cosmonauts, which is the antagonist group of this game. They're an evil organization of space pirates, which are after the power cells for their own reasons. Who knows? It's not truly clear what's going on between them and the professor till the very end. All the encounters with them are quite amusing, especially when Terry decides to perv on one of them. Outside of the main cast, all the world's NPCs and their little problems tended to blur together in my mind. No big personality distinctions to speak of between NPCs. If they didn't animate in some way or make a little noise beforehand, I wouldn't be able to differentiate whom was speaking. Ironically enough, this was also an issue for the localization team. As Tom Hewlett recalls, there's a lot of odd dialogue in Contact, seeing as the professor on the top screen is speaking with you, the player, about Terry, the main character. Also, the files I was working with did not list the speaker of any dialogue. While it wasn't a problem most of the time, scenes where multiple characters are talking were challenging to figure out. Most times you just meet people, ask where the power cells are, fight a boss, grab the cell, move to the next island. I can't say the simple structure is a bad thing for all players, but I was beginning to tire of the formula because nothing exceptional or bizarre was popping up to keep me invested. Excuse the pun, but I almost jumped ship entirely by the time I made it to the desert level. Let me preempt the resident Contact superfan on YouTube before he drops a hot comment and a thumbs down on this video, ready to lash out at me for not completely filleting the metaphorical penis of the game at all times. But listen here, man. Despite my waning interest, I finished the game in tandem with taking several unplanned naps in between play sessions, and I'm happy to share that the game gets so much more interesting in the third act just after Terry leaves the desert. This is where the game won me over, and I'm a lifelong fan, okay? Terry finds his way to Habara Island, which is a giant shopping mall and arcade for him to explore. Here, he has to enter a couple of arcade games to battle his way to the top of the tower so he can make it to a rock concert which may have a power gym. I love the retro-inspired maps where Terry has to battle F1 race cars and the short trip through an old-school medieval RPG world with some elements of Gauntlet thrown in there randomly. My only gripe here is that Habara Island is too short, and I wish they would have explored the throwback levels a bit more. And there's not even a big boss fight on this island, so you just kind of rush your way through it. It feels like a missed opportunity. At the end of it all, I appreciated that Contact was way ahead of its time and seemed to tap into the retro-inspired level design way before that became all the rage. With all the old technology references, chiptune music, hilarious characters, and deep gameplay, if it were released today by an indie studio, probably would have been met with so much more praise and recognition. Without delving into any further spoilers, I will say that Contact has a fantastic climax and resolution that pays off for the short running time of around 10 hours for the main story. The final moments of the story sunk its hooks into me, and I found that the ending leaves the story wide open for a follow-up. Oh, by the way, Akira Ueda was teasing a sequel to Contact. He was gonna make a Contact 2. If you like Contact, there is a spiritual sequel to the game. Ueda put his heart and soul into his next big Contact-like project called Sakura. This game is absolutely beautiful. Graphically, it's gorgeous, and yes, Ueda designed the entire game himself. Nobuo Uematsu and Kazushige Nojima, the composers of the Final Fantasy and Kingdom Hearts series, also did the soundtrack on this game. Sakura Note scored a 33 out of 40 by Famitsu, and one of the reviewers thought it was excellent. From the dialogue to the music, to the light, to the beautiful graphics, I was pretty much knocked over by the story at the end. It's a gem of a tale, one that gets under your skin. If I have any complaint, it's that I wish that the main scenario was a bit longer. And it only sold around 4,000 units in Japan, so it never had a chance to be localized over here. Even though this is the drop-off point for Akira Ueda in the tale of Grasshopper Manufacture, he was a developer with an esteemed career, creating artwork for some of my favorite games, and developing two very original IPs that are beloved by the people who played them. That's all I have for this episode of Grasshopper B-Sides. If you liked what you've seen, go check out the other 2 episodes. Go check out my other Grasshopper reviews. I want to thank all you Grasshopper boppers out there for watching, and I'll see you all next time.